welcome to the CE Pro podcast. I'm Executive Editor Arlen Schweiger. You probably know the name Micah Sheveloff from his work as an industry PR professional representing clients such as Savant and AudioControl. But you might not know Micah is also an accomplished musician. His latest album is called Rockville, and Micah joined us for the latest Industry's Got Talent segment to chat about his musical background and what goes into the making of a great album these days. Micah Sheveloff, founder of the public relations firm WIRC Media, who also recently released the album Rockville. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh my God, thanks for having me. Welcome to sunny St. Pete.
Awesome.
80 degrees and sunshine.
Micah, you've spent many years working in the custom electronics industry, but we wanted to talk about your personal side instead of the companies you rep today and your career as a musician. So, let's just start off with, in terms of your background, you were born into a house that was filled with music, with your dad as a professor of music at Boston University. Did you embrace, music? Did that come naturally through your exposure to it, or how did you develop as a musician?
Well, in a way, for a kid, it's you think of it at that time as being force-fed. My mother was a musician as well. They both attended the high school in New York City that the TV show Fame was based on, and went to college for music after that, and then ended up in Boston. And my father taught, he was a professor of musicology for almost 50 years at Boston University. Sure, as a little kid, they handed me instruments when I was 3 years old. I was doing ear training at that age. So, my father would play me segments of a melody and I had to sing it back or play it back. I was in a touring choir in late elementary school, early junior high. I read music at a very young age. I think it does positively impact your capacity to learn in some ways. So I think there's value in it, as rounding one out as an individual.
Okay, Micah, looking back at your career, you were kind of cutting your teeth in the Boston music scene in the 1980s. Did you realize how vibrant the scene was with bands like Till Tuesday, the Del Fuegos, Fahrenheit, and then later bands like Letters to Cleo and the Lemonheads? Did you realize how good the scene was back then?
So, I was a teen, late teens, early 20s, and there wasn't a whole lot of coherent recognition of things like that at that age. I was just rocking, playing, sort of immersed in the scene. I played numerous gigs with Charlie and just part of that whole crazy Bun Ratty's channel. There's so many places, Jumbo, Jaspers, the whole scene. I don't think if I had any cogent realization of what was going on and what the potential was, I probably would have navigated differently, but that's the beauty of being a youth. So it is what it is. I didn't really have a grasp of how insane and colorful it was until later in life.
Arlen, before you ask the next question, Micah, where did your band, the Detours, fit into that scene?
The Detours, a portion of the Detours was from Lexington, Mass, where I grew up, but they were a few years older than I was. We met actually in the scene, in the Boston music scene, not in Lexington. They were immersed. They were residing in a warehouse in Waltham, Mass, that had been used by Aerosmith. And if you look at early Aerosmith records, there are references to a warehouse spelled like wrong. I forget how they spell it, but we were there, and they had already kind of established themselves, but didn't have any keyboards. And I kind of brought that, ARP string ensemble, piano ARP string ensemble combination that kind of gave it a little bit of that 80s gravy. And we ended up having, we made a video for a song called Stuck in My Car that ran #1 local WBCN for 8 or 9 weeks in the summer of 1983. And we just played, as a result of that, we played sold out venues for months. It was just an incredible experience. which I'm super thankful. Like you can't choreograph anything like that. It was one of those things that just super thankful to have part of my past.
So Micah, this is pretty fun trivia, I think, for our audience. But you were in a band with the vocalist from Extreme, if people remember those that band, with their vocalist Gary Cherone. And did you have any idea that Gary would go on to, have such success with Nuno Betancourt, and especially that huge hit that they had, More Than Words?
No, I'm no crystal ball. I tell you what, when I worked with Gary in the mid 80s, the band was called The Dream. They ended up selling the band name to CBS for a TV show, and they became X Dream or Extreme. So there's the trivia part of your question. When I played with them, they basically took me with my classical piano background and threw me into a situation where they wanted, they wanted synthesizer parts, and I was completely lost. So musically, it wasn't a good fit, but I knew right away that Gary Cherone was a talented dude. He was a great lyricist. He leaped all over the stage. His fitness was insane. He could sing, and he also just had a sense for performance that they still play today. They do very well. They're all over the place internationally. And I was there before Nuno. I met him a couple of times just going to see Gary. What a talented crew they are. Just really, and he almost killed me once. He jumped on stage and grabbed at what he thought was a bar, but it was one of those portable movie screens, and it came crashing down right in front of me. So he just missed taking me out with his antics. Great, talented dude. So again, all sold out venues, playing with people like the Joe Perry Project, Fahrenheit, with Charlie Farron, and tons of other. I can't even think of them all. Probably half of them I've forgotten, but just amazing experience.
Okay, Mike, as your career progressed, you did find success with the Voodoo Jets. And I think one thing that was unique about that band is that you had a completely unique sound than a lot of bands out there at the time that were primarily guitar-based. How did that sound come about?
Well, first of all, what happened was after I left the Boston music scene, I lived in Burlington, Vermont for a while. In Boston, I got very deeply involved with very high-end car audio, and that took me to Vermont. It took me to Connecticut. And during that time, I was just playing sessions. So and doing some, production and working with artists, but I wasn't in a band or doing any kind of real live band performance at that time. I had one record that I did with a bunch of guys called Something Outside. That's out there. Actually, the record is called Hurt Dance. It was done around 1990, 91. It was one of the earliest Pro Tools records. Some great players on it too. Graham Maybe from Joe Jackson's band and some other people. And that's a good pop record. It's a really good record. Those guys did a great job. But I became reticent for the band thing. And so in the early to mid 2000s, I grabbed this guy, Francesco Perona, who is just a gifted fretless bass player and had a really unique vocal style. And he knew John Fowler, the drummer from the band Steelheart, who, rest in peace, passed away in 2008. So the three of us put this trio together. And I always, going back to the warehouse in Waltham, one chemically affected evening, I plugged a Fender Rhodes into Joe Perry's guitar amplifier stack. And I just created this insane sound, and it never left me. Like, I always thought someday I'm going to do something with that. So fast forward to 2003, 2004, I bought a Roland AX1, which is the keyboard you strap over your shoulders, and I just triggered a very carefully tailored Fender Rhodes sample, which I drove into a wall of Marshalls and created the Voodoo Jets thing. And that's kind of how I wrote a bunch of power pop songs, and we did some touring, made a couple of records. The first record was produced in Boston by David Minahan, who's a legend, all kind of an alternative rock legend, and played with the Replacements, and recorded that right under the shadow of Fenway Park. So the Voodoo Jets was completely unique. There's one, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of video. There's one live video from a club in New York on YouTube of a song called "Just for Fun," and you can see John doing his thing, and he was an unbelievable drummer. In addition to that, he could sing harmonies the whole way, drumming away and doing his thing and singing. The vocal mics right there, and he was an amazing backup singer. So it's kind of a cool video from that standpoint, but it's just a stationary camera on stage with us tearing it up. So, but you get a sense for it.
So during all this time, you're starting to, along with your musicianship, you've got other things going. So, we want to know, how does a guy go from, Boston and that whole New England music scene to the car stereo industry that you briefly mentioned, and then into PR, doing, working with the consumer and custom electronics markets, with this focus that has brought you to all these industry events and being a fixture in the custom industry these days?
It's the progression and is kind of a lot of it is intuitive. I was just looking for a way to earn a living when I started playing music in the Boston scene. I was pumping gas and working as an apprentice car mechanic, and one of the things is it began to mess up my hands. You drain a transmission pan, when all that stuff runs down it just started to beat up on my hands, and I was like, I'm going to mess up my piano fingers. So I got into car stereo, and I was introduced to a place called Rich's Cartoons in Watertown, Mass. And there's countless stories. What's funny about that is that I was immersed in the music scene at that point, and all the rock and roll guys, Aerosmith guys were customers there. Charles Hawkwadera from WBCN, with all the WBCN guys were in and out there. So it was kind of like family day. We all knew each other, and it was just kind of the Red Sox, the Celtics, Oil Can Boyd, and later Tom Brady. I mean, everybody was in and out of that place. So it was quite a colorful place to hang out. So I worked in car stereo for a long time. I was very passionate, very intense about it. When I opened my store in Connecticut, I got published a lot, and I saw how the public relations engine worked. How at first it was the manufacturers saying, hey, you should cover this guy, meaning me, because he's doing innovative work, but really what they were looking for was coverage of their products and their services and whatnot. So I saw how that worked, and when I got older and I started a family and I wanted to sell the business, the lovely Lucette Nicole, an esteemed colleague in PR, she said to me at that point, why don't you go work in New York City for Audio Video International while you figure out what you want to do next. And I did that with Nancy Klosek, who you guys all know. And I worked there, and I saw again how the PR engine worked. And a lot of the smaller companies, even mid-sized companies, just didn't have the team internally to make it happen. And it was right at the very beginning of digital photography, and there was all kinds of exciting things happening. I said, I think I could improve the PR process for a lot of these smaller companies. And I had a couple of smaller clients, a company called Astroflex, which was a Canadian company that made remote starters for your car. And they said, look, we think this business is changing. We want to sell the company. And they said, get us as much press as you can, which I did. And they got acquired by Directed Electronics. And I got a call literally at the end of the day. And they said, thank you so much, you're fired. And that's kind of how, a lot with the acquisitions. And then I had Teal loudspeakers as a client. And that visibility, really helped me grow my business. And then Savant and companies like AudioControl and Bryston. Anyway, it just grew, and it's been the most fun of my professional career by far. Awesome clients, awesome people, just amazing. Love it.
Okay. I was going to say, Micah, these days you can be seen at the trade events and booths from companies like Bryston, AudioControl, and Savant. But the other side of you've evolved as from a rock guy, let's say, to a singer-songwriter. How did you evolve from a rock guy to a singer-songwriter? And can you talk about the recording of your new album, Rockville?
Yeah, no problem. So keep in mind, Bob, I evolved first from a classic, I was taking classical piano for years and singing classical music and going to ballets with my mother and father, and symphonic performances and all of that. So I evolved from that through typical, rebellion stages into the rock and roll thing, the Beatles, Partridge Family, the Monkees, all of that, Batman, all of the TV stuff. And then I was at a friend's house, Concord, New Hampshire in the late 70s, and I saw the band Cheap Trick on Don Kirshner's rock concert. It's totally changed my life. Every musician has those moments where they're like, and I saw that they performed a song called "Oh Candy" off their first record. It just changed my life. I was just like, I gotta play rock and roll. So that was a come to Jesus moment for me. I played a bunch of noisy music, and the Voodoo Jets. People have said to me that numerous times, that's the loudest band they've ever heard. We were just out of control. And then, but my writing, and if you even, you listen to all the work that I've done, my writing was always, a little complex. Guitar players hate working with me because my chord voicings are all twisted and upside down. And so I went back to, and I was always passionate and fond of, the great singer-songwriters like Joni Mitchell and, just other genres. I got back to Lyle Lovett's another one that really made me stop and think, I'd like to sit down and just play singer-songwriter material. And in order to do that, I had to write some. So I made a record called Exhibitionist, which was made to tape, really minimal editing. And that was really something I just had to get out of my system. When I got around to making this record, Rockville, is the first record that I recorded in St. Pete. And I'm so fortunate. I reached out to Big 3 Studios down here, which is a major label studio. And they referred me to this guy, Jason Pennock, who's just this awesome LA producer, engineer who decided to raise his family back here in St. Pete. And he and I worked together to put this record together. So it's a completely Pro Tools record. For me, that doesn't really change all that much. I'm going to play the parts. I'm going to sing the parts anyway. So what it does is it gives me access to Jason. Jason was a drummer and he had piano. So just the access to being able to choose your drum samples, just to dial in all the sounds that you want with an expert on that level was unbelievable. He was just such a great asset. I've recorded to all different kinds of microphones the retail in the thousands of dollars. This whole Rockville record was made to a Shure. It's the one you see on all the podcast site. It's a $500 or $600 Shure microphone, and people like this.
SM7, I think.
Yeah, and they like this vocal performance the best. So, I think it's all about the hands. I think Nuno used to say that. People would ask him about sounds, and I've heard him say this somewhere. It's really a lot about the player, and it's the same. I feel like with this engineer, he did just a magnificent job of getting the best out of me, which is, vocally not always easy to do.
So Micah, we'd really love for you to do a performance for us today. I know you're set up down there for it. But real quick, before you give an introduction to that, just tell us, tell everyone where they can find your music online.
Well, I'm still waiting for, I'm waiting for Pandora to give it the green light. Other than that, it's everywhere. So, it's on, for the hi-fi guys, it's on Qobuz, it's on Tidal. It's on all the, Apple Music and Spotify and all of that. And, any industry person can just email me and I'll give them a private concert like we're doing right here. Whatever, I'm easy. Nobody's touring right now. So, we're all sitting home. What's it, live from home or live from here or whatever it is, the hashtag. So
Couch tour.
Couch tour, exactly.
Almost like Daryl Hall, live from Micah's house.
Live from Micah's house, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, I love doing that. I did my first Facebook Live last week, and we had a big storm up back here, and there's lightning going, and whatever. And so I'm game for anything. The song I'm gonna play today is Dynamite. It's the third song off the record, I know Bob wanted to put me to work. He wants to put the wheels to the road and let's see what we can do here. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll play a song.
Thank you, Micah.
Anytime, my pleasure.
All right, well,
let me,
fire
Micah,
away.
I was going to say, Micah, before you play the song,
Yeah.
you had referenced that guitar players hate working with you because you like these intricate chord voicings and whatnot. Can you give us a little background on this song in terms
Yeah,
of?
so I can give you a little background. So, and you mean musically, like technically?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the verses of the song are pretty straightforward, but and this is a perfect example of that, Bob. You picked a good song to ask me. The chord voicings for the chorus they're all inversions. They're all E flat, as you know, Bob. Guitar is tuned to E natural, so you're either going to tune the guitar or down or use a capo or something. You know, it's just E flat is always challenging, and in addition, you know, they're I don't know if you want me to demonstrate, but they're
Yeah, if you could, Michael, let's give a little musical lesson for those out there.
well, I don't know if it'll be a lesson, but you know, so this is so I'm using an A flat major chord with the 7, which would be G natural. So I've got an A flat here, I'm going to the 7, that's a G natural. So here's the A flat major chord, throw the G natural on top, but I've got an E flat in the bass. So that is the second inversion, because A flat is the root, C natural would be this first inversion, E flat would be the second inversion. So I've got the second inversion in the bass. Then a sus, resolving to the root. Here's your chorus progression. So it's like not rocket science, but it's challenging enough that, you know, we'd do tracking. This is why I ended up with a guy, there's a guy in New York City named Mark Schulman, who I played with for years. And he's a monster. He played with Suzanne Vega through all those big records, and Jewel and countless other artists. He's in New York City, and I actually flew up to New York to do a couple of Rockville tracks with him. And he's just a monster. And like, I'll give him any song in any key, whatever, and he'll chart it out and be ready to go. And that's kind of like, you know, when you find someone like that. Also, I worked with a guy named Cameron, who's like a 20-something-year-old kid here in St. Pete for the other guitar tracks, and he did an unbelievable job. So there's people out there, but I just, for the most part, the guitar players will look at my charts or look at these songs and be like, oh my God. So it's just whatever, you know, it is what it is. You want a little dynamite action?
Yeah, yeah.
We all just landed here, the wicked and the wise, my friend, as strong as you appear. See others falling down again, and just a little pill, something to wash it down. Play the songs you love, reminds us that you're gone again. Hey, dynamite way to go, my friend. And hey, dynamite way for the show to end. Sunshine makes me high, like your song.
Micah Sheveloff, thank you so much for that beautiful performance.
Hey, thanks for having me. Totally an honor to be on with Bob and Arlen, the music masters of CE Pro.
Thank you, Micah.